Shishi, wi email hoko, tabu omitibotsa wi YouTuber olo o tidushe. Hello, my name is Hakon, and welcome back to my channel, where today I will again say a few words about my progress when it comes to constructing my language for use in my future fantasy gamebook project. So this is a language that I talked a little bit about last time called Latake, and it's a very simple language. But though it's simple, it's also easy to mess up, of course. And you may have noticed if you watched the previous episode that I spelled my last name the wrong way last time. Yes, because this language does not have S. It has sh, but not s, and it has but not So that is the correct spelling of my last name, of course, is therefore Shelida. So that is the way it would be transcribed and included into the Latak language. So, but there's an interesting thing that I didn't think so much about last time, is that if you only have one sibilant, really, so you only have sh, you don't have z, you don't have s, that means that whether you say z, s, or sh, it will be interpreted by a speaker of a language with only one of those sounds to be the same sound. And that means that there is a possibility, of course, that some speakers of Latake, they would have pronounced their sh a little bit more like s or like sh, that sort of in-between sound as well. And of course, L and R, again, they are very often interchangeable in some languages. And of course, in Latake, they would be pronounced, if you say L and you say people would interpret it to be the same sound, most likely. Another thing, of course, which I mentioned last time, that we have only we don't have n, we don't have ng. And of course, again, those sounds will be allophonic. If somebody says one or the other of those sounds in that same group, it will be interpreted the same way. Same with f and v, for instance. So there's lots of these things going on. When you have a very small phonetic inventory, you get these allophonic groups. That means that you can actually vary quite a bit what happens with the sounds. And I will consider having a little look and see if there are certain phonetic environments where one of these or more of these sounds will change into one of their potential allophones as well. So we'll have a look at that eventually. So today I just wanted to have a little look and tell you a little bit more about what I'm doing now to develop my language. So last time I mentioned that I started making my language on Volgalang, and of course I've taken it out of Volgalang now. I've exported the dictionary so I can adjust it as I go along, and I also found a list of sentences online that is a very useful tool in creating a Conlang, because one of the best ways to flesh out your grammar in a constructed language is to translate into it. When you do that, you are confronted with lots of choices you need to make for how your language behaves. And I'm just going to talk a little bit about that. I've got my screen right behind my camera now. I have made quite a few adjustments to the dictionary, by the way, because there were some anachronisms, and also there were some words that should be derived from each other that were given two different words in some cases, and also there were some words I wanted to create deliberate derivations from one to the other that weren't part of the dictionary. So I got this list of sentences now, and for instance, the first sentence is birds sing, and of course that could be interpreted in two different ways in English. It could be either birds sing, as in right now, birds sing, but it could also be that birds sing. Birds have a habit of singing, and so actually there are two different things that can be expressed with the same sentence. But the first expression in Latake is fomoge wile. Um, so that is fomo, which means the bird, and you have the ending ge, meaning plural indefinite. So fomoge wile is the base form of the word to sing. So wile means sing, sings. And well, it's plural, it's singular, it's no difference in this language. The second sentence is children play, and in Latake that is Atige, Atige, lili. So play, lili, children, art, child is ati, and again children, plural, indefinite, is Atige. Then we have dogs bark. And it occurs to me now that it says birds sing, not the birds sing. Still, it could be construed as either habitual or, yeah. Anyway, if it had been habitual, so birds sing actually meaning birds have a habit of singing, it would have been fomoge iwile in Latake. Next one is dogs bark, and that is Wetewoge, Wetewoge, lada. Dogs bark. Bees hum. Miyige wuye. The humming of bees. I'll just have a look at my dictionary now because I can't remember what I derived that from, because humming is not necessarily just, I mean, it could be different things. Just see if I made any changes there. Hang on. Just have a look at my. Oh yeah. I used just the word hum that was already in the dictionary. So just like when you're humming to yourself, because it is quite a similar sound to the one that bees make. Baby laughed. And of course, when you say baby laughed, that is technically, in many ways, that's a definite form in English, because you're using baby almost as like you use a name or a word you use to denote a certain person. Like I say, mum laughed or dad laughed, baby laughed. So that is definite form in Latake. So it's a mili, which is the baby, lagumoka, which means lagumo is to laugh, lagumoka is laughed, past tense. And the next one is quite an interesting one because it is the sun shines. And this is where, now of course it depends a little bit about what the context is, but in the normal sense, when you talk about the sun shining, you are talking about the state of nature, something that is the way it is. It defines a state. It's a stative verb. And it's quite common in lots of languages to actually express these a little bit differently to English. So for instance, in English you say it is sunny, which is synonymous in most cases with the sun shines. And I want to express those two things exactly the same way with a sort of a stative construction, where I use the same construction as I use for a habitual or continuous. So I put an E in front of a verb as a separate word. But in this case, I am going to actually use the noun as a verb to define this stative case. So sun in Latake is mutsu. But to say the sun shines, or the sun is shining, or the sun usually shines, etc., you can say I mutsu. So basically, sunning, which means it is sunny, the sun is shining, etc. And the next sentence is a very similar one. The wind blows, and of course that is again, it's just what the wind does. It's actually a verb that describes what wind is in a way. And so again, I'm using that stative kind of construction, and I say ikoki. So koki is wind, but ikoki means it is windy, the wind is blowing, etc. You with me so far? Yes. So those were the sort of one of the first major decisions I made in for the language. Next sentence is the car started, and of course, car would be quite an anachronism in fantasy world. I'll just have a little look and see what I used there. I'll just see if I can find it in my dictionary. If I'm leaning to the side like this, it means that the window I'm looking at is actually behind the camera. I can probably make it a little bit smaller like so I can actually access it without having to duck and dive like that. So I want to have a look now and see about, I'm looking for the car. Okay. I see I actually used the word as in the dictionary that says car, but of course, and of course, car is really, when you think about it, it is derived from the word chariot or carriage and lots of sort of much more primitive things. So I'm just going to put into the dictionary now, just so that is clear. Just put Lomedo, which is the name for car now, and also make that carriage. And also I'm going to make it chariot and wagon as well. So Lomedo and wagon. So the car started. Lomedo iloka. So ilo is the verb for to start, to begin, and iloka, past tense, the car, the carriage, the wagon started. The next one I have is school began again. And here's another interesting thing that I wanted to include now. I was not happy with the word for school. What is a school? And also, is that a concept that one would have in a sort of a fantasy setting? Remember that after all, school is a kind of a concept that hasn't always existed in all societies at all times. And I was thinking that I should link the concept of school with the cultural concept of storytelling. So that school or schooling is basically synonymous with storytelling. And if you want to say school as in the location where schooling is taking place, it is the location of, and of course you have a derivational morphology for place of where something is happening, and so place of storytelling is going to be synonymous with school, or place of learning potentially as well as a sort of a secondary possibility. So there will be two different words for school to do with learning or telling stories, both. So I'm just going to, whoops, I made a mistake there. So I'm going to search for school. Okay. So I'm going to have a little look here. So we have school, two words for school. Ego, which is the same as the word for storytelling, and also ego, where eco means learn and study. So basically it is storytelling or learn storytelling or study storytelling as a compound word. So those are the nouns for school that I've decided to use in Atige. So we have school began again, ego, iloka. So iloka, same verb as the car started, iloka, past tense, began. And again is kumipi. So school began again, iko iloka, kumipi. Then we have another one where I had to make a decision about how adverbs are used. So we have the child ran quickly. So now I have to decide how do I put the adverbs that are linked with a verb in the sentence. And I came up with actually, I want two different solutions there. So we have the word for child, the child, which is Atige. And then we have run, which is shumo, and ran, shumoka. And we have the word for quick, or fast, which is fabi. And what I decided to do was that I either make it an adverb and put it after the verb, so that is Atige, shumoka, fabiki. So the child ran quickly, just like in English. But I also wanted a secondary construction where I put the adverb in front of the verb, in which case it sounds like Atige, fabi, shumoka. So it almost becomes a compound word with, so the child quick ran as an alternative way to create an adverbial construction. The next one is also quite interesting, I think, because I made another decision about etymology there. So we have yellow daffodils nodded gaily. And daffodils, of course, the thing about flowers, birds, animals, etc., is that if they are endemic to an area where a language is spoken, there will be words for those animals, plants, etc., in that language that are most likely completely different to those found in other languages. And daffodils, definitely not a word that I would use directly. I would have to find out what would, if you have daffodils natively in the same area where this language is spoken, if they grow wild in the forest, for instance, what would they be called? And the first thing I could come up with was sunbells. This culture would have a concept of bells, or the bell shape, and they have a concept of the sun. Yellow is sort of the color of the sun, so the association with the sun is there already. So and of course the color word for yellow in this language, by the way, is ali, which also can mean red, orange, or bright colored. And so when you want to disambiguate what exactly color it is, the reference would be to the sun already, I think. They would perceive the sun as being yellow. So so we have yellow daffodils, so that is yellow sunbells. Bell is tsifi, and sun is mutsu, as I mentioned earlier when we talked about the sun is shining, the sun shines. So ali, mutsu, tsifige. No, that's not right. Ali, mutsu, tsifige, stress on the antepenultimate syllable, kuyuma e kowika. So that is the adverb construction with the compound of the adjective linked together with the verb. So kuyuma means joyous, and ekowika means nodded. Ekowi means to nod or to bow. Or you can say ekowika kuyomaki. So that is when you have the adverb form of the adjective, so you add ki at the end. So ekowika kuyomaki or kuyuma ekowika. And then the last one I'm going to do right now is Little Marigold Cried Bitterly. And again, I had to make some decisions there. Crying bitterly is, when you think about it, it's a very it's an expression that is very idiomatic. And this is something that I have to sort of make sure that I include idiomatic expressions, of course, in Latake as well. And they don't have to be the same ones as English. But and marigold, of course, is a name, so that has to be transcribed into Latake. So, and in in Latake, marigold would be Maligo, or Maligo rather. Maligo. Maligo is marigold in Latake. And then there's little marigold. And what I normally would want to do is that for basically anything that is described as little, the standard thing is to put the diminutive suffix at the end. And we have a diminutive suffix in Latake, which is lo. And so Maligolo, little marigold, lewaguka, so lewago is to cry, lewaguka is cried. And then we have an idiomatic expression here in Latake, which is wuda-tabie. And that literally means green tears. And the connotation there is that things that are bitter are things that are poisonous. And of course, they know about poisons, they know about the bitterness of poisons, and they know that it comes from plants, and the sap of plants have that sort of greenish color. They have an association between poison, bitter, and green liquid. And so wuda-tabie, green tears, could mean bitter tears. It could mean poison tears, of course, but that wouldn't be the case. It's an idiomatic expression for crying bitterly. So wuda-tabie. So it was inspired by the English idiomatic expression, but I made something else in Latake. So and that's, I've done a bit more of those, and still have lots of things to iron out, but it's a starting point, I think, and I've had to, by going through this long list of sentences, and let's see how many there are actually. I'm not sure. It's 1068 sentences, and they grow in complexity as you go further along. And once I've gone through all of those, I should have been able to iron out all the grammatical details of Latake and also have alternatives. I would have worked a lot on the vocabulary as well, and fleshed out a lot more there, because I would have had to make up a lot of new words now for things. And of course, I would use a lot of the base vocabulary that is already in the dictionary as a starting point. So there's a lot of stuff like that to do, and I find it quite an interesting procedure, I suppose. It is possible for me, of course, to not do all of these things because the language isn't going to feature that heavily in, certainly not in the first book. But I have to sort of assure myself that, first of all, I know the language reasonably well, so I don't make any mistakes if I need to use it. And also I want to familiarize myself a bit with the words, so I know how to create derivations of them or etymologies from them, if I need to create other words that they match together with the basic vocabulary that I already have. So that is part of my process now, and that is pretty much, I think that will do for today. So I just wanted to talk a little bit about what I was doing with the language now. So I've established different ways of using the adverbs. I've also introduced a kind of stative verb system where you can also use a noun as a verb in the habitual or continuous form. I created at least one idiomatic expression. I've also done a few other things. I've tried to make some derivational words like the sunbell and the storytelling reference for the school as well. So those are the things I've been working on, and these are, I'm quite happy with how it is going so far. So all that remains is to say tsukahu fowifu tashuka emoto okogifu fewi io kimo malabito. Fau shishi. Shishi.